Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. Landis, big game preview. Penn State, Oregon, Big Ten championship game. We're going to start off the show with that for half an hour. Excited for this one on Saturday night, are you not?
I am excited for it. I actually think it's a pretty compelling matchup, and the spread is a little closer than I thought it would be too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
As you said, like basically every conference championship game this weekend is like 2.5 points. It's pretty wild.
I think the biggest spread is 6.
I think the Louisiana Marshall game, I think this is some indication that doing away with divisions and just taking the 2 best teams at least gave us what are perceived to be closer games and better matchups, that you're not getting a situation where, hey, this is actually the number 1 team in our league versus the number 6 team in our league. They just happen to be the best team on the other side.
Correct. I guess in the Big Ten, it kind of worked out. Like if we were doing East and West, I guess this is the game we would have had anyway. Right? No, I guess not. Well, if we had East and West, Ohio State still wouldn't be in, right? Because they lost to Michigan and Oregon. But
yeah, it'd still be overall record. Yeah, not just division record. So we're going to start off with a Big Ten championship game, big game preview. We'll then do a Mountain West preview, Boise State, UNLV. Then we'll preview the MAC championship game between Miami, Ohio, and Ohio. Then we'll quickly brush on the American championship game, Tulane and Army, a little bit on the Sun Belt, Marshall, Louisiana. Marshall's in West Virginia. We claim Marshall, right, Landis?
We sure do. Yeah, Tudor's Biscuit World. That's up the north.
And then we'll make sure we reset our records for the year and wrap up the dragon statue and see if we have to cut it in half or not. But we'll start off with this game. It's only the 5th meeting ever between Penn State and Oregon. Landis, do you know what the first meeting was between Penn State and Oregon?
No.
It was in the 1960 Liberty Bowl in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh, we should bring that back.
Any of your ancestors might have gone to that game?
Maybe. My father was not alive yet. Perhaps my grandfather.
Yeah.
Or someone was there. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they then played in a home and home in 1963 and 1964, where they actually won at each other's place. And then they played in the Rose Bowl after the 1994 season. I mean, that was like Penn State's national title season, right? Or that they should have won a national title, but weren't voted into it. And Penn State beat Oregon in that game 38-20. So they haven't played since then, Bill. So they haven't played in 30 years. So this is one of them where, an Ohio State-Oregon rematch would have been cool. If it was an Ohio State-Penn State rematch, it would have been cool. But the fact that these teams haven't played in 30 years and did not play in this regular season, I like that part of this game.
You're blowing my mind that the Liberty Bowl was once played in Philadelphia. I had no idea. But
I don't know anything else that you said. I've been knee deep in the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense, right? But
because where is it now? Is it in Memphis or something now?
It's at the Liberty Bowl in Memphis. Yeah. Where Memphis plays home games.
But it's like, how did you? I mean, but why didn't you? I can't believe you didn't do a project in 7th grade about how Memphis stole the Liberty Bowl from its rightful home in the cradle of liberty, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
I did not do that, but I know what my son's going to do for his 7th grade history project.
Oh, the fight, just the war. Can you imagine? You're going to have everybody in Memphis mad at your kid. That's okay. We're going to start on the Penn State offense versus Oregon defense side of the ball. Bill Landis. Is James Franklin going to let it rip in this game?
I'm a little skeptical. What do you think?
So here's my question. Penn State is 4th in the nation in offensive success. They are a do-your-job offense. They have learned from the Penn State game, from the Ohio State game. In the Ohio State game, they got backwards. Their leading rusher was their tight end. Their leading receiver was their running back. In the Ohio State game, Ty Warren led him in rushing. Nick Singleton led him in receiving. They've gotten their head on straight, I think, from the basics in the last 4 games. They've gotten back to running the ball. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in the Ohio State loss. And the reason that I'm citing the Ohio State loss, Bill, is because I think we have felt for the last month that was a jumping off point for not a new, but a resolute and improved Penn State. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
At least they didn't throw their season away because they lost to the Buckeyes again, Penn State.
Yeah.
Also a good thing for Penn State. So in the Ohio State loss, great running backs, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen combined for 18 carries for 42 yards. The last 4 games, they've averaged a combined 21 carries for 100 yards per game. So they've gotten back to that. That's good, right? We okay with that?
We are okay with that. Yes.
In the Ohio State game, Ty Warren, oh man, I lost the stuff on this, had 8 touches in the Ohio State game. 5 targets and 3 carries. Since then, he's averaged 13 between a couple passes he's thrown, the targets he gets as a receiver, and the carries he gets in direct snaps and that kind of thing. So averaging 13 per game, Bill, compared to getting 8, only 8 in the Ohio State game. That is progress. Don't forget, you have a rare player that you need to maximize him at every opportunity, right?
Yes.
Is he going to be Taysom Hill? Because Taysom Hill's hurt for the Saints now, right? And aren't they like, oh, now they're realizing that Taysom Hill is like the most valuable player in the NFL? Is that, I know Taysom Hill was a college quarterback, right, at BYU, but can Ty Warren be that?
Yeah, Ty Warren committed to Virginia Tech as a quarterback. He was going to play quarterback in college. I
think he might be Taysom
a version of it. I think, but I think far more like receiving upside.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then Penn State for the year has a 70% rate of scoring touchdowns in the red zone. They're 26th in the nation. That's pretty good. 38 touchdowns and 54 trips. In the Ohio State game, they got in the red zone 3 times, and they kicked a field goal, threw an interception, and got stopped at the goal line. So they scored 0 touchdowns and 3 trips. In the 4 games since then, 20 red zone trips, 16 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and 2 times dorking around. One was kneeling out the end of the game. One was their backups at the end of a game. They're basically 16 of 18 on touchdowns in the red zone since the Ohio State game. If they had scored touchdowns in the red zone against Ohio State, they would have beaten Ohio State. So that's an improvement. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Get the ball to Warren more, run the ball more effectively with their backs, cash it in the red zone. That's what they've been doing for the last month. Here's the last piece, Bill, from a Penn State offensive perspective. First game against West Virginia, they chucked it down the field, right? They had the big play to Trey Wallace that hit. They had a big long one to Amari Evans right before the end of the half, and it was like, oh, man, here they come. Penn State's going to let it fly. Since Drew Aller threw 3 picks against USC, they've actually pulled back a little bit. And in the last 6 games, this includes the Ohio State game, by the PFF metric of big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays, which is one that we like and one that we cite at times, the last 6 games, he has only 2 big-time throws in 6 games, but he has 0 turnover-worthy plays in 6 games, which is great because he threw 3 picks against USC and they almost lost. I think that's the part they have to let go. His ADOT, his average depth of target in the first 3 games, including against West Virginia, was well over 10 yards.
Yes.
It's been under that since then. They just, I think, are not attacking. I think maybe they got scared off a little bit by USC. I like the way they've rounded every other part of their offense into form. I think they have to have Drew Aller attack down the field, even against a good Oregon secondary. And the reason I think they have to do it is, A, I think it's their chance to beat Oregon, but B, they're not going to win a national title being scared to throw the ball down the field. This is a chance to exercise those muscles, even if it doesn't work, because they're in the playoff. I would try this stuff on Saturday against Oregon, Bill, because I think Penn State's going to need it when they get into the playoff. And if they can be a little more effective and be a little bit more like they were against West Virginia, just with some shots here or there, I'd give them a chance in this 12-team thing. But I think they've got to work it out indoors Saturday night.
They need some juice at receiver, though, that they don't have, right? Like,
they have to conjure it. Like they can't make a trade before Saturday.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
They can't make a trade before Saturday.
Okay.
They could maybe use Tyseer Denmark more. Freshman receiver.
Give me some more of that.
Freshman receiver from Philly.
From where?
From Philadelphia.
The Cradle of Liberty?
To be more specific, he's from Roman Catholic High School. That we know that produces the finest men in the land. He's like
so people are still getting to know us on this show, Bill.
Okay.
That's your alma mater?
That is where I went to high school, yes. Pretty dynamic, like slot type of a receiver coming out of high school. Ohio State, I think he might have been committed to Ohio State at one point. Or if not, Ohio State was kind of all over him. He chose to go to Penn State. He's not played much this year. He's like a guy, James Franklin does this, I think it's like green, yellow, red to discuss younger players. Red is like you're not ready to play. Yellow is like you're kind of close. Green is like, here we go. And Tyseer Denmark, I think, has been a guy floating in different parts of that conversation all year. He played 11 snaps against Purdue. He played 15 snaps against Maryland. He caught the touchdown pass in the last play against Maryland that had Mike Locksley all steamed. I just think he is potentially a little bit different than what Penn State has at the receiver position right now. And I think it's possible that he could be the infusion of energy at that position that Penn State needs. He's a freshman who hasn't played a ton. He's played 43 snaps on the season. He only has 3 targets all year. But I don't think Penn State's going to find what you're looking for with its current receivers, with the guys who have played the receiver snaps all year. I think they need somebody else. And if they're going to find somebody else, I think it needs to be Tyseer Denmark.
I like it. I mean, but I think, do you believe they have to try?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think because they're not like they're not built like Notre Dame, right? I don't like Notre Dame. I don't think has to start throwing it like crazy to be competitive in the college football playoff because they're so good at running the ball. But Penn State is not that. They are a good rushing team, but they're not the same thing. Like they need to open it up. They need to be more aggressive. They need to take shots down the field. So I like the idea of even trying it in this game, even if it doesn't work, because what do you have to lose kind of thing. But I do think they need to have that about them once we get to the playoff time. So why not start it now?
They are better. Drew Aller last year, according to PFF, about 32% of his throws were 10 yards or more down the field. It's more like 41% this year. So they are better. But I just feel like they've pulled back a little bit in the second half of the year. And they've done what they needed to do. And it's not to be the foundation. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen running the ball, Ty Warren doing all his stuff, and then Drew Aller hitting intermediate throws. He's one of the better. We talked about intermediate throws with Iowa State and Rocco Becht. Drew Aller is number 6 in passer rating on intermediate throws this year among Power 4 quarterbacks. Like he's good at that too. When we're talking about Rocco Becht, you brought up Drew Aller because he is good at that. So there's a lot there. Take a couple shots. Yeah. That's game-winning shots. What Oregon did to Ohio State, Penn State needs to try to do to Oregon. It's not going to be easy. And we'll get to the Oregon defense here in a second. But I think they have to try. And if they do, if they can add that, this is a team with a good defense, with a baseline of efficiency offensively. This is a talented team, Bill. But you're going to have to make explosive plays to win 4 games to win the national championship, right? You're going to have to make some explosive plays in there. And you're not going to make them if you don't try. And 0 big-time throws in the second half of the season from Drew Aller. You've got to risk it. It's because I don't think this is a let's play close with Oregon and try to win a first-round game and then lose in the quarters. Like, let's go, Penn State. There's an opportunity here. And I'm only saying there's an opportunity because I think that's how good they are.
I think so too. We've mentioned this a couple of times in big game breakdowns, and it would certainly apply to every postseason game. I think from here on out, it's about limiting and finding explosive plays, right? And defensively, like Penn State's been very good at that. Offensively, that has been, that's the reason that Andy Kotelnicki is here. And it's been a little fits and starts at times. I think we definitely saw it in the passing game and the rushing game earlier in the year. And then throughout Big Ten play, it just wasn't consistent enough. Like they got to find it, whatever it is. And if you want to treat the Big Ten championship as like a fact-finding mission to figure out the way that you can generate some of those as you go into the playoff, and then I'm okay with that. But without it, I just like Penn State to me is not a team that can make much noise in December and January if it doesn't have that.
Last part of it for Penn State is they did lose Anthony Donko, their good right tackle, really good right tackle against Minnesota a couple games ago. Otherwise, they've been healthy there. So Drew Shelton at left tackle, Vengione at left guard, Nick Dawkins at center. I think they feel really good about Sal Wormley at right guard. And then they put in Nolan Rucci, who's the Wisconsin transfer, who's been in at right tackle. Anthony Donko gave up 8 pressures all year in 10.5 games. Nolan Rucci gave up 4 when he came in against Minnesota. So he gave up half as many in a half, basically, as Donko did all year, but he gave up none against Maryland. I think he played okay last week against Maryland. So they have to be able to protect to take some of these shots. But Drew Aller can move around a little bit. They're not going to be just dropping back and running double moves all game. I think where they have to protect a ton. But I think the offensive line has been good. I think it'll be good enough. Again, this is what happens in November and December. You have offensive line injuries. How big of a deal do you think they can withstand the Donko injury? We're a game and a half into them having done it so far.
I mean, they haven't seen Jordan Birch yet. So
they have not seen Jordan Birch.
Ask me, or nor have they seen Mateo Uiagalelei.
They have not seen Mateo Uiagalelei.
So ask me again after the game, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I think they've done fine to navigate it thus far. But here's the test. Here comes the test.
You know how many sacks Oregon had last week, right?
10.
10.
Yeah.
Is that a lot? That seems like a lot.
10 seems like a lot.
Was that in a month? They had 10 sacks in November? No. They had 10 sacks in one game. 2.5 from Jordan Birch played 24 snaps against Washington and had 2.5 sacks. Mateo Uiagalelei had 2 sacks last week. They're great. I think this is an excellent defense now. They're 10th in defensive success rate. I think they are good at all 3 levels. Derek Harmon was like 2nd and 3rd team all Big Ten. I don't get it.
I had him first.
I think Derek Harmon and Mason Graham are the 2 best defensive tackles in the country. I don't know.
They were my 1 and 2 on my Big Ten ballot. I don't know why he wouldn't be.
Yeah,
Derek Harmon.
So this is a 3-level defense. Bryce Betcher at linebacker has had a great year. Jeffrey Boss at linebacker is just a veteran. Jordan Birch, again, as you mentioned, has been mostly out of the lineup in the second half of the year, but they played him 24 snaps last week. I think he is coming back into form. I think we expect him again. Maybe they'll be a little careful, especially if they get a lead, but Jordan Birch is going to be a factor in a postseason run for Oregon. And he is a rare, nearly 300-pound defensive end. Not many guys like him. And Mateo Uiagalelei has really stepped up along with Tatum Tuioti in the absence of Birch. And I think now they have 3 guys on the edge, Landis, that they really believe in. I think last week, Tuioti and Uiagalelei each played 32 snaps. Birch played 24. And while Birch was out, they really found something with those guys too.
Yeah, Mateo was like a real presence, I thought, against Ohio State in a game that they played without Jordan Birch. And Tatum Tuioti certainly wasn't a liability. Like I don't like doing silver linings necessarily, especially with injuries, but it does seem like some real depth was built there in the absence of Jordan Birch that I think is going to suit Oregon very well in the postseason.
Oregon's pretty good at stopping teams on 3rd down, 10th in the Power 4. They're pretty good on stopping teams in the red zone. They're pretty good at not giving up a bunch of long plays. I really like Jabbar Muhammad. I was surprised he maybe wasn't higher on the all Big Ten teams. Kobe Savage and Tyshim Johnson have played well at safety. I think this is a 1 through 11 defense, Landis. Do you believe that?
Yeah. Like I don't like nothing that's like super glaring as a weakness. I think like the other corner spot opposite Jabbar Muhammad.
Nico Reed on the other outside corner spot. Okay.
Yeah. Is like it's fine. I don't think it's not like but it's like no defense is without it's kind of vulnerable point, but it is a very solid defense.
So then let me ask you this. This is a what is Penn State question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oregon gave up 34 points to Boise, and Ash and Genty ran it 25 times for 192 yards.
Yep.
They gave up 31 points to Ohio State. Will Howard threw for over 300. Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka combined for 19 catches for 193 yards. So they've been run on and they've been thrown on by teams that are very good at that. Otherwise, here's the number of points they've given up by game: 14, 14, 13, 10, 0, 9, 17, 18, 13, and 21 last week against Washington when Washington scored in the last 2 minutes against Oregon's backups. Otherwise, it was really 14. So they really haven't given up they haven't given up 20 points to anybody else except the 2 best offenses they faced. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all right. Well, like Jeremiah Smith and Ashton Genty got you. Welcome to the club. Is Penn State's offense more like Boise State and Ohio State, or is it more like the 10 other teams that Oregon held down?
Probably more like the other teams. It's not like Ohio State's.
So like that's the question.
Yeah.
If you're not a great offense, I think Oregon's gonna give you hell, right? Like they're gonna if you just try to be a try-hard offense, I don't think Oregon's gonna stand for that. They're gonna get after you.
Yeah, no, they will. Yeah, I don't know. Like, they don't. Penn State doesn't have the dudes on the outside that Ohio State has. I mean, Oregon got to play against an Ohio State offensive line that was missing Josh Simmons for like an entire half. So maybe Penn State's offensive line is better. I don't think any of Penn State's backs are comparable to Ashton Genty because I don't know that anyone is comparable to Ashton Genty. Yeah, it's not the high flying, we're gonna find answers type of offense. At least it hasn't been that to this point. Maybe Andy Koltonicki's been holding on to something that can generate a little more explosiveness.
But that's how I would be thinking as James Franklin and Andy Koltonicki. I would think to myself, good is not good enough. We must go be great, which makes this potentially just an ideal situation for the Penn State offense. The defense is good enough to force you to try to put the pedal down. But it's not a generational defense that like we can't. We just have to make sure we don't turn it over. I think it's the exact right defense for this Penn State offense to test itself against going into the playoff. And if Penn State comes out and turtles, I'm going to be ticked. Because they kind of turtled against Ohio State. They turtled at the goal line against Ohio State, and James Franklin admitted it afterward. If they do not learn lessons from that, let this rip. Go down swinging. Because if you go down swinging against the national title favorite, and then you go back to State College and get ready, and you took your shot, and now you're getting ready to go host a playoff game, that is a successful Indy trip. But if you go and hope that good is good enough, it's not going to be. And then you're going to go back and be like, well, I hope we can do this. And I hope good is good enough. This is your moment, Penn State. Let it rip. They will.
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I have no idea what to expect. That's why I'm excited to watch it.
Do you disagree with my view of that? Or do you kind of think like,
no.
Go down swinging if you're going down.
I agree. I need to see Penn State do that to take Penn State seriously in the playoff.
Okay.
Because if we're going to get same old big game James Franklin, then I think Penn State's playoff run will be a short one. So like here's your opportunity, Penn State, to like set the tone for what you want to be in the postseason, even if you lose.
I don't yell at people that have no potential. If it's like you're doing your best, and this is nothing against Indiana. I wouldn't yell at Indiana the same way as this, right? I feel like Indiana has maximized what they can be. Go take your shot in the playoff, but there's not as much to yell about. Penn State is the perfect 12-team playoff team, so take advantage of the opportunity. Other side of the ball, Oregon offense, Penn State defense.
Yeah,
another great matchup here.
Can I interest you in some Abdul Carter and denied Dennis Sutton against Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly?
Oh, yeah, you can.
I think it's what it is, right? Like we know what Penn State wants to do. Penn State wants to get after you up front. It's top 10 in the country in pressure rate, and Dylan Gabriel is like, he's not the least pressured quarterback in the country, but he is among the least pressured quarterbacks in the country. And if you don't bother him and he's just hanging back there doing his thing that he's done for 6 years in college football and 60 something starts in college football, like he's going to pick you apart. Teams have not really been able to bother him this year. Like the best case of it, I think, was Wisconsin, and that was also Dylan Gabriel's worst game. They only sacked him twice, but they pressured him 40+% of his dropbacks. I thought like They moved him at times that created some errant throws. It felt like maybe at others he was a bit sped up that created some inaccuracies. So that's what Penn State has to do here. Like, if Penn State just tries to like box Dylan Gabriel in and play coverage and trust their guys to cover Tej Johnson, who came back from injury last week, and Evan Stord and Trayshawn Holden, like eventually that dam is going to break. I think in the same way we saw it break against Ohio State when Oregon hit them over the top for a couple of back-breaking completions and touchdowns in that game. So, like, I like Penn State secondary, but I just think it's really difficult to cover elite receivers for an entire game, and that's what Oregon has, especially if Evan Stewart shows up and plays its A game. So plays his A game. So it's two things for me. It's finding ways to affect Dylan Gabriel, which a lot of teams have struggled to do this year, and then Penn State's going to tackle really well in this game. It's had some issues with that, I think, throughout the year. Like Tony Rojas at linebacker misses a lot of tackles. Zion Tracy, the guy who plays nickelback, he's missed a lot of tackles this year. Got to be like disciplined against screens. 20% of Dylan Gabriel's pass attempts are screens. Got to be able to tackle in space. Got to be able to handle speed. Like I actually think like Penn State has actually had pretty good defensive speed for much of James Franklin's tenure. So I don't know that I'm like overly concerned about Penn State's ability to like match speed with speed, but merely being fast, I don't think is good enough. Like you have to actually get those guys on the ground when you get there. And then if you do, I think you have a chance. Like Oregon really struggled to hit explosives against Wisconsin. They did a really nice job of affecting Dylan Gabriel, and I think kind of like keeping things in front of them and making Oregon move the ball down the field, because Oregon's red zone offense, they're 23rd in the country in touchdown percentage, but they've had some bad games. Like they were 40% against Ohio State, 20% against Wisconsin, 50% against Boise. Like they'll struggle in the red zone a little bit. And some of that has been Dylan Gabriel throwing some pretty bad interceptions down there. But Dylan Gabriel, like while he is a mobile quarterback, also isn't a big quarterback. So that I think limits a little bit of what they can do with the quarterback run game down there. So if Penn State's defense can make it a game where Oregon needs to execute in the red zone to win, then I think Penn State has a shot. If it becomes what it was against Ohio State, where Oregon struggled to score in the red zone, but just threw it over their heads for touchdowns anyway, then I think it's difficult for Penn State to keep up here, because I don't know that Penn State has the offensive firepower to match what Oregon's going to bring to the table.
You think potentially Penn State is even maybe better prepped to run with Oregon than Ohio State was in the secondary?
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe there's more speed there for Penn State than there is at Ohio State.
Just got to run with Evan Stewart when he starts getting by you. Is Abdul Carter, according to PFF, has 45 pressures, which is number 11 in the Power 4, but he has at least 6 in 3 of the last 5 games. He's coming on a little bit.
He has turned it up. Yeah.
Could I give you Abdul Carter as the revelation of the college football postseason starting Saturday night?
Can you give me, the guy who picked him to be a Heisman Trophy finalist, that? Sure. I would love to be vindicated at the end of the year.
So I do think college football needs to come up with a playoff award, best player of the playoff, if they're going to do the Heisman before the playoff starts.
And
maybe we'll do it. Could Abdul Carter be in contention for that? That again, Penn State's going to have to win some games and play some games, but is he potentially a game wrecker? Is he in game wrecker mode with the way you said he's turned it up in the second half?
Yeah, I think so. If you wanted to like run through the rosters of all the playoff teams, maybe we can do that once the field's announced, like singular talents who could be the engine for their team, offense or defense. I think Abdul Carter's pretty high up on that list.
Because this is one of those where if he has a strip sack on Dylan Gabriel, 2 other sacks, and has a 3rd down hurry where Dylan Gabriel had to scramble out of the pocket and throw incomplete because Abdul Carter destroyed a tackle, that could win this game.
Sure.
That could win this game. Yeah. I mean, we know what it looks like. I don't have to explain to people what an edge rusher destroying a game looks like, but you think he has that level of talent?
I think he has that level of talent. I'm interested to see how much they might try to move him around, because they're like, we've discussed Oregon having to play without Marcus Harper, its right guard, the last couple of weeks. He was questionable against Washington, but then didn't play. Jordan Burch was also questionable, and he did play. I don't know whether or not Marcus Harper is going to play in this game, but David Aiuli, who's been replacing him at right guard, he didn't have a good game against Wisconsin. He was better last week against Washington. But if Aiuli's playing, I might do some Abdul Carter in the B gap and see what's up, right? Just move him around a little bit. I'm not saying put him there for the entire game, but try to hunt some mismatches with Abdul Carter because these tackles are good, right? I don't think Abdul Carter's not going to smoke Josh Connerly and AJ Cornelius on every single pass rush rep, right? He might win some, but I think those guys will win some as well. If you can get Carter more involved on the interior, where I think the center and the guards for Oregon, especially when Harper plays, are good, but the tackles are better, and that should be a place where if you are trying to find a dent in the armor, that's probably where it is. So they've done a better job, I think, sort of like second half of the season moving Carter around. But they need to keep doing it. And if they can find like a real stress point on Oregon's front, and then I would just keep attacking that with Carter. And I do think he can be a game wrecker if that's the case.
How much do you feel like the Oregon offense was in limbo for the games when Tez Johnson was hurt, and that there is a re-explosion of the Oregon offense waiting when the full Tez Johnson experience is maybe sprung back on the world on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think very much in limbo. You just lose. He's so threatening, right? Like he can run by you, catch it down the field. He can catch it 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage and turn it into a 70-yard touchdown. He's also like a dynamite special teams player in a return game. So you're just missing, like, Evan Stewart will give you some run after the catch. Trayshawn Holden will give you some run after the catch, but it's not as consistently reliable as what Tez Johnson gives you when he's healthy. So that's a big piece to remove from that offense. It's just, it's a whole lot more space you have to worry about now. So I don't know. I mean, Tez Johnson played against Washington, right? So I don't think he would have played if he wasn't healthy. He didn't play the whole game. He only played 39 snaps, and he only had 3 targets, 3 catches and 3 targets. So part of me is wondering exactly how healthy he is, and if that was a let's go beat our rival, come back, play a little bit, help us, and then maybe we don't use you as much until we're back into the playoff kind of thing. So we'll see what that looks like. But he's their best player. I think he's definitely their best offensive player. I think you can make the argument that he's the best player on either side of the ball, but there are some good defensive players. So obviously it's a huge deal to not have him.
So I think it is possible that Saturday night could reveal to us that Penn State is prepared to be the surprise team of the postseason. I also think Saturday could reveal to us that, holy moly, Oregon's healthy again, is prepared to be the surprise team of the postseason, in the way that they are the only undefeated team. They are the betting favorite to win the national title. And perhaps we have forgotten how good they are, because since the Ohio State game, they didn't really play a banger. And the thing that we remember the most is the close game at Wisconsin, which was game 8 of 8 straight weeks of playing, which nobody else in the country had to do. And the Harper, Birch, and Johnson injuries, while part of the deal, if they're all back, that's full throttle Oregon. And if we've been looking for a super team, the only possibility for a super team in 2024 is fully healthy, full throttle, loosed on the world Oregon. And I think it might be in there.
It could be in there. Yeah. Like, because you wouldn't say that about Ohio State, because Ohio State is never going to be back to its full offensive line, no matter what happens.
Right.
The rest of this year. Right. So that's the thing that would be holding them back. It definitely could be Oregon. Like it's only a 3.5 point spread. I think an Oregon runaway is potentially on the table. And obviously if that happens, then we're having that conversation that you just had. I'm less interested in Oregon here. I'm more interested in Penn State, just to see like what kind of plan they come into this game with, like what kind of swing they take in this game. But it is definitely an opportunity for Oregon to like set a tone going into the playoff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. These two teams could be in the semis. Like I think like Oregon, I would be surprised if they don't get to, they might end up playing it. They play Ohio State in a quarterfinal. Well, and it's good Ohio State. Who knows? But this is how I really am excited for this. We talk about the North rising up. These two teams have done almost everything you would want from them, except like take away what Penn State falling apart in the red zone against Ohio State. I think otherwise these two teams have given the North what we wanted this year, which is like, thanks fellas. Great job. And let's go play for the first time in 30 years on Saturday night and see what's up. So
yeah,
make some picks. Who you got?
I'm picking Oregon. I need to see it from James Franklin before I can predict it. It's not to say we won't be able to get it done. I think there's a plan there. I think they have the players to do it. I just don't trust him enough to do it yet. But I have it close. I have a 28-24. I think Penn State's defense will play well. Penn State's defense has typically played well in big games under James Franklin. It's been the offense that has let them down in those moments. And we're talking specifically, I think, or predominantly like Ohio State games. Some Michigan, and there's a couple other sprinkled in there too. But I think there's things with Penn State's defense and its aggression and its front and its pressure that will keep Oregon from putting up a big number here. That will keep Oregon from just going like score. But I don't think there's enough there on the outside for Penn State to get it done. So I'm picking Oregon.
Yeah, we're the same person. I basically the same score. Oregon 30-24. I'm curious to see like what the vibe is like. You have one team that is coming from Oregon to Indianapolis, and all those fans are battening down the hatches for a long postseason run. And then you have Penn State fans, and it's a long drive if you want to drive it. And they're also preparing for a postseason run. And so I think in terms of like in-game atmosphere, we were saying if this was Ohio State, Indiana, and those two fan bases can just bop over to Indy, no big deal, and still save their money for a playoff run, this thing would be sold out. But I don't think you can be mad at the crowd. And then if it's like, well, then why are we playing this game to begin with? I don't know that this is a go-to-it game, right? Because the go-to-it games, because it doesn't really, quote, matter, except of course it matters. The winner's going to get a bye, the loser's not. So it does matter, but they're both in. But I think it's going to be fun to watch on TV. Maybe that's what it is for the people who are wondering why conference championship games exist.
They're TV shows. Yeah.
They're TV shows. So don't go. Save your money and save your energy for the stuff that really matters when you'll remember being at a playoff game. If it's not a game that your team has to win to get in, don't go. But have a party. Because I kind of want to see Abdul Carter against Josh Connolly, like you said. And I want to see Dylan Gabriel trying to throw the ball on Jalen Reed making a play, right? So, I mean, like, we're all good with that.
We are all good with that. I would maybe say, like, if you're within shouting distance of Indianapolis, it's like $12, I think. It's the last game price. Right. I would go because I think it's going to be, like, it's two pretty high-level teams.
We're going. We're going. You and I are going.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, I totally get, like, Penn State and Oregon fans not wanting to shell out the money to make the trip when you're hoping to make subsequent trips in the postseason.
Yeah.
But like if you can get there without having to get a hotel for the night, I would maybe suggest doing that because I do. It's Lucas Oil Stadium is a cool stadium, and I think it could actually be a pretty fun game.
Yeah.
Did you? So with Penn State, there's going to be the only team to play all four West Coast teams.
Oh, congratulations to them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very exciting. I will say again, like the don't go thing. When Penn State played Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game in 2016, my daughter and I just went for fun and sat in the stands. That was a banger. That was a great game. That was a
really good game. Yeah.
So it's like, so again, I'm just saying it's a $12 threshold. It's $12. And so you like a tank of gas, a soft pretzel. If you can round trip, if you can do it for less than $20, go ahead. Otherwise, save your money for the playoff and watch on TV. But definitely watch it on TV. Don't brush off like, it doesn't matter. Because like there's a lot of really good players. This is one of those, these are not underdog teams. These are teams stacked with talent. And they haven't played in 30 years. And Bill's son's going to do a project on it. Maybe on Saturday night, you know what would be good? If you just take some notes and gather some firsthand information for his project down the line. His 7th grade teacher will thank you for it. All right. When we come back, Mountain West, MAC, other breakdowns on Kings of the North. Doug and Bill, KOTN. Producer Mike reminding us that game is on CBS. The Big Ten game is not on Fox because Kevin Warren horse traded that game away, right? Before he left. His last act as Big Ten commissioner was giving CBS this Big Ten title game.
Yeah, I don't. So the only championship game that Fox has is the Mountain West game, which is kind of weird.
Oh, for real? Are Gus and Joel doing the Mountain West game?
I actually don't know the answer to that. It's a fantastic question.
I guess we should look that up. So but I assume so. CBS. This is Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson, right? So you'll get it on CBS. So that's everybody has partners, so you got to keep all your partners happy. So those guys do a great job. It'll be a great broadcast, but it is kind of weird that it's not Fox because people have become very accustomed to that.
Looks like Mountain West is going to get Jason Benetti and Brock Heward, who they're good. I like them.
I love Jason Benetti and Brock Heward. Yeah. I think they are awesome. I think the other guys are awesome too, but those guys are great. Brock Heward is soothing but also incisive, I think. So and Jason Benetti has just like the right amount of like juice, but not going too crazy. So that's a good team. That's a good team. Mountain West Championship, Boise State. That's what we said 3-point line, by the way, officially for Oregon, Penn State. This is another close one. UNLV, Boise State, Mountain West Championship. Bill Landis. They played already this year, right? This is a rematch.
This is a rematch of a game in October that Boise won 29-24 in Vegas. It is also a rematch of last year's Mountain West Championship game.
Oh my!
That Boise won 44-20 in Las Vegas.
Friday night, 8 p.m. Boise favored by 4. Bill. So this is just a reminder of everyone's been putting Boise in since the preseason. UNLV is good.
UNLV is very good. Here's the thing with this. Ask anybody. You're playing Boise. What do you got to do? It's like, well, you got to stop Ashton Genty.
Yeah.
Ashton Genty had the worst game of the year against UNLV, and Boise still won.
Won anyway. Okay.
Genty had 33 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown in that game. He was better in the second half than he was in the first half, and he had, I think, the decisive touchdown for Boise in the fourth quarter of that game. But he averaged 3.8 yards per carry, which is by far his worst. He's had games where he's averaged more than 10 yards per carry, and he averaged 3.8 against UNLV's defense, which is very good. Barry Odom's a good defensive coach. They have Jackson Woodard, who's the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. He's a very good linebacker. They got a good secondary. They were game for Ashton Genty and the Boise offense the last time they played, and then it didn't matter. They still lost that game. There were a couple of untimely penalties for UNLV in that game. It had a turnover. It had a drive where kind of stalled out on the edge of the red zone. They had to kick a field goal. So there's some missed opportunities for UNLV there. I actually think they're just two very, very evenly matched teams. Boise's a 4-point favorite here because they're playing this game in Boise. If this was a neutral site field, I think it's about a pick 'em, right? So, I think it's going to be incredibly fun. I think it's going to be incredibly competitive. It is. What do you got for Ashton Genty? And then on the other side for Boise, it's can you contain? I think you start probably with Ricky White, the UNLV receiver, who I mentioned in passing, but I'll repeat it here, is the nation's leader in target share. No team throws the ball more to one guy than UNLV does to Ricky White. He is very much the passing attack, and Boise did a nice job against him the last time these two teams played. He had 5 catches for 57 yards, and he didn't score. So even as you would assess nice job against Ashton Genty, nice job against Ricky White, I think you did a nicer job against Ricky White than you did against Ashton Genty, and that is part of what helped decide that game. So I think it's kind of the same idea here. Whoever does that the best probably wins this game. Haj Malik Williams, the quarterback for UNLV, has been very good since taking over.
You love Haj Malik Williams.
Yeah, he's a fun player, man. Matt Sluka. Just the total misread of the situation.
Total misread.
You thought you had leverage, or maybe you thought you got screwed. Whatever it was that led Matt Sluka to say I'm not playing for UNLV anymore because you didn't give me what was promised, and on some level probably thinking of course they're going to give it to me. UNLV was just no, we're good because the other guy turns out is better, if not significantly better, than you are. So Haj Malik Williams has been pretty good for UNLV since taking over as starter. Has given them more in the passing game. He runs it just as well as Sluka does. He's cooled off a little bit. I think it was the because we did a big game breakdown for this the first time they played.
We did. So Friday night, and then watching that game, I thought UNLV was going to win when I was watching it.
Yeah, so did I. And I think coming into that game, it was like I think it was Hajj Malik Williams' fourth start, and he was like a 10-1 or 10-2 touchdown to interception ratio. He's backed off of that a little bit. It's not quite the same thing. He has 5 touchdowns total in his last 4 games passing, but he can still run it. He has 879 rushing yards this year. He had 143 rushing yards and a touchdown against Boise. Like, he is a problem.
Yeah.
So it's like Boise has one problem, and he's a heck of a problem, and Ashton Genty. UNLV might have 2 with Hajj Malik Williams and Ricky White. So I don't know. If you want to think 2's better than 1, maybe UNLV can be your lean here.
And just as a reminder, other than UNLV's loss to Boise State, the only 2 losses these teams have taken are to the 2 best teams in the country, Oregon and Syracuse.
That's right.
So Boise lost to Oregon by a point, and UNLV lost to Syracuse in overtime. Just to set the stakes here so people understand this, in the current college football playoff rankings, Boise is 12 and UNLV is 20. So the winner of this is going to get the group of 5 spot.
Mm-hmm.
Army is playing Tulane in the American Championship game. We'll cover that game in a moment. Army is number 24 in the playoff rankings, but nothing Army or Tulane can do is going to leap them past the winner of this. So this is a play-in game for the playoff, Bill, which is not the only one of these games we have this weekend, but it's like the playoff is this many games, but then the playoff this is actually like the first round of the playoffs, and one of the games is Boise State UNLV.
Yeah, and it's going to be played on a home field too. Like they're
right.
I don't know, is it still Albertson Stadium? I'm not sure, but that place is going to be rocking on Friday night. This will probably be the best atmosphere we see of conference championship weekend.
And then the other thing at play here is, as it stands right now, Boise at number 12 is currently ranked ahead of anybody from the Big 12. Boise's number 10, not number 12. I wrote that down wrong. Boise's number 10. Boise is number 10. Arizona State's 15. Iowa State is 16. So there's like a debate of, as people understand this, 4 conference champs get bids. It doesn't have to be the Power 4 conferences. And the group of 5 team is guaranteed to get in. They could get a bye. If Boise State wins, it's very possible they wind up as the 4 seed and get a bye in the playoff. Mm-hmm. And now the Big 12 champ will not get a bye. If UNLV wins, UNLV's not going to get a bye because they are behind the 2 Big 12 teams, and I don't think they will leap just for beating Boise. And then that means the Iowa State, Arizona State winner now would get to be the 4 seed or potentially the 3 seed. And now the other part of this is if you throw in Clemson, if Clemson wins the ACC, which I predicted, you picked SMU, I think Clemson could wind up as, I think Boise State and the Big 12 champ could maybe get buys there. I don't know. But the bottom line is, like, there's a lot going on here. And the Big 12 is rooting for UNLV, right? That's at least where this starts. The Big 12 is rooting for UNLV because that would guarantee the Big 12 a bye.
Yes, I think that is correct. I'll be interested to see how the Clemson debate would fall if Clemson is the one that wins the ACC.
There's only so much of this that people can take. Clemson's 17 right now. So if Clemson beats SMU, that would be 17 beating 8. So it's like, how do you compare 17 beating 8 versus 20 beating 10 versus 16 beating 15? And 2 of those teams get buys and 1 doesn't. I don't know what the answer is.
It's also 20 beating 10 on the road too.
So I can't pretend that there's a definitive answer there. But just so people know the stakes here, Bill. And by the way, look at you. Look at you with a little upset special here, Landis. Mm-hmm. I have Boise State 27-26. I obviously thought about picking UNLV. Why did you actually do it?
Just because, mostly because I think they're very even, and like it's hard to beat a team twice thing is like a cliche, but I actually think it's not terrible to fall back on if the teams are practically even. So, and I kind of think they are. I don't know. I guess you could say the same thing about Ashton Genty. It's like you shut him down once, it didn't matter. Can you really shut him down again? I kind of feel the same way about Ricky White. Can you really slow him down again? And maybe outside in the elements you can. I don't know what the weather is actually going to be like. I'm assuming it's going to be cold, but I don't think there's going to be any snow or wind necessarily. If there's wind, like both these teams can run the ball too. Like UNLV runs the ball plenty. They have a very high rush rate. If the elements limit passing, then it definitely favors Boise. Maybe I should have checked that before making my pick, but I just think I think Barry Odom's a very good coach. I think UNLV's got a really good quarterback, an excellent defense, a dynamic receiver. And Boise is also Boise lost its starting center in the first game of the year, and it's starting left guard. I think is left guard or right guard. Starting right guard. Excuse injuries.
Me. Everyone's got to deal with them. I'm not saying that for Boise. I'm reminding people for all the other teams.
So Boise lost a starting center in the first game, and it's starting right guard in the second game. And at the time, they thought both those guys were out for the season. They're both back. But this will be the first game that the starting five has played together since the season opener against Georgia Southern. And while it's very good to have your starting five back, it is a five that has not played together for a very long time. So I wonder if that might actually be not to Boise's detriment necessarily, but something it has to work through maybe early on in the game that might give UNLV an opportunity to do something.
The last part of this is the Heisman odds right now. Travis Hunter is minus 5,000, which is you've got to bet $5,000 to win $1 on that. Am I reading that right? Betting person? I'll have to ask T-Shoe. Can I borrow $5,000? I want to get a Snickers.
There's a $5,000 to win $100.
Oh, maybe it is. Oh,
yeah, 5,000 to win 100.
Oh, that's totally worth it.
5,000 to win $1.
Yeah.
I could really use $100. I can't bet on it because I'm a Heisman voter. Ashton Jeanty is 13 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
If Ashton Jeanty rushes for 361 yards and is dragging UNLV defenders down the field and scores 4 touchdowns and single-handedly wills his team into the college football playoff, I could see it. We always talk about get to this point so you can make your case on conference championship weekend. Travis Hunter's case is made. Colorado's not playing. If Ashton Jeanty leaves voters with a performance that people say that is one of the greatest college football performances I've ever seen, he's got a shot, and he's the type of guy who could do it. He did it against Oregon in week 2. They just didn't happen to win.
Yeah. He could 267 is a season high. He needs 340 to tie Barry Sanders.
And that's one of those. We talked about that with some Melvin Gordon stuff. I think we're Melvin Gordon had a game where he went 400 yards in the game.
Yes.
Tie Barry Sanders, carry your team into the playoff. Ooh, mama. That makes me maybe not want to bet $5,000 to win 100. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, I definitely would.
Yeah. As a Heisman Trophy voter, I think I can tell you that if Ashton Jeanty does that, he probably has my vote.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing. So I don't even have to talk about hypothetical bets that I'm not allowed to make, and I would never make. Heisman people, I never. I can just ask you as a Heisman voter, would that get you your attention? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Because that's the Travis Hunter case right now is we've never seen this before. So then Ashton Jeanty has to match we've never seen this before. But if he matches we've never seen this before and also gets his team into the playoff, Colorado's not in the playoff. It's not a bad tiebreaker. Doesn't mean Colorado. No. Colorado had a great season, but it's on the table. Okay. You going to watch this one Friday night? You want to watch it?
I'm going to try to. We're going to be out and about in Indy.
I'm going to be at a party. They'll have it on. It's a college football party. We'll be at it. MAC championship game. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah.
This is us. These are our people. This is at Ford Field. They played in October. Ohio University and Miami, Ohio, who are playing in this one. They played in October and Miami won 30-20, Bill. So this is a rematch from that at 7 p.m. Saturday at Ford Field. Miami is 8-4 overall, 7-1 in the MAC. Ohio is 9-3 overall, 7-1 in the MAC. Miami is 4-2 in MAC title games. Do you know what Ohio is in MAC title games, Bill?
No.
0-5. So this is quite an opportunity for the Bobcats. This is quite an opportunity. They lost in 2006, 2009, 2011, 2016, and 2022. 10 different teams have won the MAC championship game since it came into existence, and Ohio is not one of them. They last won a conference title in 1968 under Bill Hess. So, like, this is what we're talking about here, and this is like a great stinking season for Ohio. Miami was picked in the preseason to win the MAC. Ohio was picked 5th. So there's just like a ton of credit to go around, including to Tim Albin, the longtime offensive coordinator there, 16 years as the offensive coordinator under Frank Solich at Ohio. He then took over and went 3-9 in his first year, and then 10-4, 10-3, and 9-3 this year. The guy's a baller, and I know I've certainly seen some people, Bill, bring up his name for like other jobs and stuff because he's done such a good job at Miami this year. He's 59 years old.
Good coach. Both these coaches are good.
Chuck Martin, 56 years old, 11th year at Miami, 64 and 66 overall, but has really had it going lately. Had a great year last year too when they won the MAC.
So he's cooking up his potential 3rd MAC title since 2019.
Yep.
Miami won 40 years from 1978 to 2018 with only 3 MAC titles, and he's trying to get his 3rd in 6 years.
Chuck Martin is also like a truth teller and a barometer for what's happening in college sports and like keeps it real 100%. These are 2 great programs and 2 great coaches that deserve this spotlight. You can have this on the second screen if you're watching Big Ten. So you can watch this for an hour before the Big Ten game comes on. You'll have an hour on Saturday night, right? Because Big Ten's at 8. This is at 7.
No, this is at noon, isn't it?
Why did I write down 7 then?
I don't know.
No,
yeah, it's 7 on the brain.
Again. We have to. I wrote it down on my thing. Do we have to restart the show? All right.
Noon on ESPN.
All right, Mike. Can you just wipe this and start over again?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
All right, so we'll go back to. I really think Penn State's offense needs to be creative and aggressive. Bill, noon. All right. Noon on Saturday. Everybody watch it. Miami has a chance to be the 4th program to win back-to-back MAC championships. Northern Illinois, 2011-12, Central Michigan, 2006-7, and then Marshall's run. So this is a lot of stuff. So Ohio's never done it, and Miami is trying to like be a little mini MAC dynasty here, Bill. Remember the end of last year, we were talking about could Miami be a contender for the group of 5 spot in the 12-team playoff this year? Remember that conversation?
I do. And then because that was when, after winning the MAC title last year, a bunch of guys were tweeting I'm coming back with the college football playoff logo, and then like half of them left.
They lied.
Some stayed. Brett Gabbert stayed. He's good. Matt Salopek, the linebacker, he's very good. He stayed. Yeah.
But a bunch of them did leave, and then they also worked the portal to get it done. And it's one of these hard things that you don't wish anybody ill, and people are trying to like chase their dreams, and I understand that. Rashad Amos, who had 1,000 yards rushing for Miami last year, went in the portal, committed to Colorado, and then in the portal flipped from Colorado to Ole Miss. Do you know how many rushing yards he had at Ole Miss this year after having more than 1,000 for Miami last year?
71.
75. And he's in the portal again. Good.
Nice.
Was that out of your butt? You didn't know that?
Just pulled it out of the air. Yeah.
And guess what? He's in the portal again. So it's just
you know what?
It's a danger.
The same thing happened. The same thing happened to Ohio. C.A. Bangora was their leading rusher last year. He transferred to Minnesota. I think he had 4 carries this year, and he's in the portal. Just stay in the MAC, man.
Caden Woolard was a first-team All-MAC defensive end last year for Miami. Transferred to Oklahoma, played 220 snaps as a backup this year. Gage Larvadane, their leading receiver last year, went to South Carolina, had 18 catches as South Carolina's 7th leading receiver this year. So it's just, we're not telling guys how to live their lives, but we're just saying like sometimes you're in a pretty good spot. But then the other thing that Miami did is that Miami was like, all right, well, these guys left. Let's go get guys. And 5 of their top 14 guys in snaps on defense this year are transfers from Rutgers, Indiana, Mississippi State, Iowa State, and Mercer. They got John Young as an offensive line starter in the portal. They got Andre Johnson from Arizona State and Cade McDonald from Michigan State at receiver. And then Keon Mosey came in and became their 1,000-yard rusher. Yeah. He's 3rd in the MAC at 87.1 rushing yards per game. He came from Kansas State. So then Chuck Martin was like, Our guys are staying. We can make it. No, they left. And he just went in the portal and got to work. 2 of the top 3 rushers in the MAC are in this game. Anthony Tyus from Ohio, 87.3 yards per game. Keon Mosey from Miami, 87.1 yards per game. These guys, the guys who performed, and then, by the way, when I'm talking about Graham Nicholson, who last year was the Lou Groza Award winner at Miami as the best kicker in the country. He was 27 of 28 on field goals last year. He transferred to Alabama. He's the kicker for Alabama, which is cool. He's 6 of 8 on field goals this year. So it's like you're at Bama, but they don't use you. And then Miami's new kicker, Dom Jobin, 22 of 26. And I'm sure someone will try to come steal him. Maybe Miami's just good at this, and they can find ways to make any of the players they have, if they have a basic level of competence and work ethic, Chuck Martin will make you look good.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio's in the same boat. I think Ohio lost 19 transfers last year. Curtis Rourke left Ohio to go to Indiana. Pretty good.
What a traitor. No, I'm just kidding.
Miles Cross left Ohio to go to Indiana. Pretty good. C.A. Bangora, who I mentioned. Kie Thompson left to go to Pitt. Linebacker. Like that's why I think both these coaches are so good, because like the MAC gets rated, the top layer of the MAC gets rated, and these guys keep chugging along. But we need to commission a study on behalf of the MAC to lay out all the guys who left and what they did. And I'm not trying to pocket watch. Go get, like, if you want to go get your money, go get your money. But I think we lay out the data and say, like, do you want to get paid or do you want to play? And then maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help the MAC keep some of these guys.
Because then also playing might help you get paid.
Yeah.
Later in another way. Like, and again, no offense, but I don't know what the money is, but I don't know that a MAC running back at Ole Miss is making $1 million a year.
I think I think maybe it's just that he is making dollars. Because I just like the mechanism, some stuff I've heard about, like Ohio in particular, like the mechanism just does not exist. I think like Curtis Rourke was like getting paid $100 to go read books to school children, and Indiana's like, you want $600,000? It's like, what's he supposed to do? You know what I mean? So again, it's not criticizing, it is admiring the ability of programs like Miami and Ohio to lose players, then work the portal in their own way to bring guys in. And what you're talking about is the top layer of the MAC getting peeled off, exactly as you said it, is the number one thing this practice. Like, what's happening in the portal? You're peeling off the best players from the lower conferences who are going to bigger conferences. That's literally kind of the number one thing that happens. Now, the other thing is the backups from the bigger conferences come down. But it's not, and Miami and Ohio are the top layer of the MAC. So they're getting peeled the most. But it's not like that opened opportunities for somebody else in the MAC to come take their spots. Right.
So like we're giving credit to these teams and credit to guys like Brett Gabbert, 50 starts at Miami. Unbelievable. Great quarterback. Parker Navarro, transfer in from UCF a couple years ago. It's his 3rd year, though, at Ohio's first year as a full-time starter. Another great year. This is just like really high-level teams. A lot of credit to them. Watch this game, whatever time it's at. It could be played. I don't even know if they've decided yet. It might be at noon. It might be at 7. No, it's actually going to be at noon. Watch that game. And again, Matt Salopek, who was the 2003 MAC Defensive Player of the Year, stayed at Miami and now has 100 tackles in 4 straight years. That is unbelievable. He's the first player in Miami history. I might be the first player in college football history.
It's like a bit of a dying breed. Yeah.
100 tackles in 4 straight years is absolutely wild. 52 starts in his career, Matt Salopek. So nothing against guys who leave, but credit to these programs for both making it back here. And again, Miami, they had a chance, and they had like the schedule. Part of the reason was they had so many good players. We thought if a lot of them stayed, the guys were saying they were going to stay when we had this conversation at the end of last year. And then they had the schedule with the opportunity.
Yes. But
they lost 13-6 to Northwestern. They lost 27-16 to Cincinnati in that rivalry game. And then they got blown out by Notre Dame, 28-3, because Miami had the bad luck to play Notre Dame after Notre Dame had lost to Northern Illinois. And then Notre Dame was woken up. And then they beat UMass in overtime, 23-20, and then lost to Toledo. So the first 5 games of Miami's season were 4 losses and an overtime win. And they went 7-0 since then and made the MAC championship game.
Mm-hmm.
We both have Miami winning. I have 23-17 Miami.
So I have Miami winning 21-20 because I picked against them last week against BG, and they just handled BG to get into this game. But I think it is worth pointing out that since losing to since losing to Miami on October 19th, Ohio has won 47-16, 41-0, 35-10, 24-7 at Toledo, and then beat Ball State 42-21 last week. They're running a roughshod over the MAC into this game. So like they are in good form. They can definitely win this game, but I'm taking Chuck Martin in Miami.
2 incredibly hot teams. Also, do you know how many times these teams have played?
110.
Exactly 100. So this will be 101. 100 times since 1908, Miami leads the series 56-42-2. We suggest you watch it. We're both picking Miami. And maybe some year, Landis, can you imagine the year when the MAC championship game has playoff implications? I hope we get to that point. Now, the hard part of it is, as you keep peeling stuff off, it makes it harder to get the non-conference wins to get yourself in that position, right? But it is kind of weird that the MAC got the win it needed this year. The MAC beat Notre Dame. It's just that Northern Illinois didn't do anything then. Northern Illinois is 7-5 and went 4-4 in the MAC. So if one of these teams had the Notre Dame win, right? And then now you're like, oh, like you're 11-1 with the Notre Dame win. You're right in the mix. You're right in the mix. So someday that could happen for the MAC. It's just not going to happen this year. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Quick break. When we come back, a couple other teams to run through and then a reset on who did a better job picking games this year. Next on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. So Landis, the thing's happening where like the podcast apps are saying who you listen to this year, right? Is it, who does that? Is it Spotify?
Spotify Wrapped. Yeah.
Spotify Wrapped. You listen to the Wiggles. Was that real? Your number one?
I mean, I don't. My child does.
Yeah.
I guess there's a way you can set up your settings so that like the thing you're clearly listening to for your children doesn't show up in your Spotify Wrapped, but I didn't do that. So yeah, my number one listened to artist was the Wiggles.
Yeah. Did you send the Wiggles a note? Did you like tag the Wiggles on Twitter and say, love you guys, number one on my list?
I didn't, but like the way that Spotify Wrapped works is like it like runs you through all your stuff, and then they get like artists to record videos to play for you if they're your number one. So like the end of my Spotify Wrapped was a very nice message from the Wiggles thanking me for listening to them so much.
How come Spotify hasn't asked us to record a rap for people who listen to KOTN on podcasts?
Next year.
Okay. We have had some people tweet it at us, though, and if you do listen to KOTN or watch KOTN, holy moly, we're grateful. It's kind of cool. We really appreciate it. All right. A couple other games we want to talk about briefly. The American Athletic Championship. Maybe you should be in charge of what times things are. Is this Friday at 8 on ABC?
Correct.
Yay, I nailed it. At West Point. That'd be fun to go to. Army's 10-1. No, Army's 11-1. Tulane's 9-3. Army went 8-0 in the American Athletic Conference and lost 49-14 to Notre Dame. Tulane lost to Kansas State and Oklahoma in the non-conference and then lost to Memphis last week. If Tulane had not lost to Memphis, they'd be on the edge of like, if they drub Army and Boise State loses, could they get in the playoff instead? But they blew it. So I don't know what to tell you. Tulane blew it. Army's in a great spot, and that gave Army the chance to host. I think this will be a great atmosphere. Tulane averages 39 points a game. Army 33. Army runs it. Tulane is pretty balanced. Tulane averages 212 yards rushing and 216 throwing. Army's 312 rushing and 89 throwing. Neither team plays very fast. Two good runners in this game. The top two rushers in the American Athletic Conference Bryson Daly, the Army quarterback, and Mekhi Hughes, the Tulane running back. Maybe the guy to keep your eye on here is Darian Mensah, who's the redshirt freshman quarterback for Tulane, who when we watched the Kansas State-Tulane game early in the year, we were all fired up about Avery Johnson. You watch that game, and it's like, is Darian Mensah better than Avery Johnson? He's been pretty good. He threw for 317 last week in the loss to Memphis. He threw for 342 and the loss to Kansas State. And on the season, he has 20 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And no offense to Tulane, they're in New Orleans, so they're not really our concern. You might want to watch Darian Mensah because someone might kind of come steal him in the portal. Maybe he'll be a Big Ten quarterback next year.
He could be. So it was who was the transfer? Malachi Singleton? Nelson? Someone transferred to Tulane, right? From USC?
Not my area of expertise.
Maybe I'm wrong there. I thought someone transferred to Tulane that was like a former big-time prospect, and then Darian Mensah beat him out. But regardless, no, he's good. Mekhi Hughes is very good. But Army, of course, is number 1 in the country in rushing rate. They run it 85% of the time. Tulane's number 8. They run it 64% of the time. Both these teams play slow, as you said. I think it's a pretty low-scoring game. Also, it's being played on West Point, New York, at Mikey Stadium. It's going to be cold. It's going to be, I think the real feels like 15 degrees on Friday night for this game. So it's going to be a little chilly, and the pads are going to be popping in this game. I think it's going to be, it's going to be some rugged stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
That's pretty cool. Like you said, this is like a preview of the playoff. Mm-hmm. Mountain West and American, both in cold weather home campus sites. I love it.
Yeah.
And I chickened out. I took Tulane 26-19.
I took Army 21-17. I did consider taking Tulane. Tulane played Navy and held Navy to 100 rushing yards and a 35-0 win earlier this year. But Army's better than Navy on both sides of the ball. Blake Horvath, Navy's quarterback, got hurt in that game. And John Sumrall, the head coach at Tulane, is too busy thinking about other jobs to coach well in this game. So Army's going to win 21-17.
Oh.
Although I guess you could say the same thing about Jeff Monken, but Jeff Monken knows how to compartmentalize.
That's true. That's a very military kind of thing. Right. So he can win this game and then go win the Army-Navy game and then start recruiting for Purdue after that.
Correct.
Yeah. Sun Belt Championship game. This is Marshall at Louisiana, right? Is it at Louisiana?
It is at Louisiana. Yeah.
Okay. I have no idea what day or time this is.
This is 7:30 p.m. Saturday on ESPN.
Okay. Don't turn this on and accidentally think it's the Big Ten title game. But we're doing this. We're giving this 5 minutes because Marshall's in West Virginia. And we like Charles Huff, but Charles Huff might be thinking about jobs too.
Charles Huff is coaching with he is under contract, but that contract expires at the end of this year. It is you don't see it. You don't see it too often in college football. Usually you're either fired or you get re-up, but there's some I think animosity there on both sides between Charles Huff and the brass at Marshall, and yet here they are in the Sun Belt Championship. Marshall's 9-3. It lost to Virginia Tech and Ohio State. Played Virginia Tech pretty well. Got beat handily by Ohio State. Lost to Georgia Southern by 1. Louisiana is 10-2. Lost to Tulane and then lost to South Alabama by 2. Marshall has not won a conference title since winning the Conference USA title in 2014. Louisiana won this championship in 2021. So it's not history for Marshall, but it's been a while, I think, since Marshall had a real opportunity to win a game like this. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know much about either of these teams other than I watched Marshall earlier this year against Ohio State, and Mike Green, the defensive end for Marshall, is a real freaking dude. He's got 16 sacks this year. He is second in the country in sacks behind our guy, Donovan Ezeraku at Boston College. And I was thinking to myself, this is going to be one of the hottest commodities in the transfer portal, Mike Green out of Marshall. And then I looked at Dame Brugler's most recent mock draft on The Athletic that he put out on Wednesday, and he has Mike Green as the 30th overall pick to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs are going to get him in the portal?
The Chiefs are going to get him in the transfer portal. So, Louisiana's got a high-flying offense. I know Tishu, you guys have talked in the betting show before about how Louisiana had been a little bit of a wagon for him, at least in his power rating. So they're at home. They're favored by 6. As we said, this is the biggest spread of championship weekend. And Charles Huff, I don't want to say it wrong. Charles Huff is more than likely not going to be Marshall's head coach next year. I don't necessarily think that means he's checked out of this. I think he would love to win a Sun Belt championship for Marshall on his way out the door, and then tell the people at Marshall to shove it because they don't want him to be the head coach anymore. So I think Marshall will play a good game here, but I have Louisiana winning 35-28.
Like it feels like Marshall has made this unnecessarily weird. I have Marshall. I have Louisiana 31-20. I think it's a tough spot for Marshall with some of that stuff. Next on the rundown is acknowledge the existence of the Conference USA championship game. These are two teams that we don't cover. Western Kentucky at Jacksonville State. It's Friday at 7 in Jacksonville, Alabama. We're not picking it.
You know what this could be though? Like honestly, like realistically, it could be the next Purdue head coach against the next West Virginia head coach.
Okay, so that makes me feel bad that we didn't pick it. Rich Rodriguez is the Jacksonville State head coach. We have talked about him for West Virginia. Everybody knows the deal there. Former West Virginia head coach himself. And then Tyson Helton is the 6th-year coach at Western Kentucky. He's the brother of Clay Helton. He's in a coaching family, but Western Kentucky sends guys to jobs all the time. So have you seen his name linked to Purdue?
I have. If you like, a lot of people's like Purdue hot lists have Tyson Helton pretty high up. Yeah.
Okay. These teams played last weekend. They played, and Western Kentucky beat Jacksonville State to get into this game because Jacksonville State was undefeated in Conference USA, and Western Kentucky had 2 losses and needed to win. So Western Kentucky won 19-17 at home last week, but now it's at Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State lost to Eastern Michigan in September, and Eastern Michigan went 5-7 in the MAC. This is the conference where people thought Liberty would be good. People were like, oh, Liberty as an outside dark horse for the group of 5 spot. They went 5-3 in the conference. Liberty was not good. Rich Rodriguez is in his 3rd year at Jacksonville State. He's 26-10 overall. This is Jacksonville State's first year as a full FBS member. They were transitioning and doing all that stuff in 22 and 23, where you move up and you're like kind of on probation. You can't make postseason and stuff like that. They're all the way here now. And here they are. Western Kentucky was picked to finish 2nd, Jacksonville State 3rd. So other than Liberty not having the season that we thought, Western Kentucky almost beat Boston College in Boston College this year. Though. Remember that game? We did that.
I do.
BC had to come back and win that game. So I don't care. Watch it if you want.
Yeah, watch it if you want. I think that's fair. Watch it if you want. It's football.
I think the thing that you said that is the most interesting thing is like, could these guys be Northern coaches? And it's one of those things where, how come you don't care about a person, and then as soon as they're in the North, you care about them? And it's like, I don't even understand the question.
What's the show called? It's like Kings of the World.
Someday, yeah. If we come on one day and announce that we're Kings of the World, then you'll know we've really made it. Okay. Can we do Dragon Statue first? Do you have the results of the Dragon Statue last week, Landis? Because going into that week, I believe you were leading 7-6. And I am very curious what happened and whether I tied you for the Dragon Statue or whether you fully claimed it outright.
You tied me. I have it here. I didn't bring it to you, but you did win this week. You won 48.4 to 36.4. So you had a really nice last week. So we can maybe cut the Dragon Statue in half here.
Okay.
So I picked Dylan Gabriel and Jeremiah Smith, and Ryan Day cost me the fantasy title by not throwing the ball to Jeremiah Smith in the second half of its loss to Michigan. You had Avery Johnson and Jeremiah Love, who both had nice weeks for you. So those were good. I was feeling really good about having Dylan Gabriel and Jeremiah Smith in my pocket. And you bested me with Avery Johnson and Jeremiah Love.
I was at the Kansas State-Iowa State game. I may or may not have been screaming, "Come on, Avery, chase that dragon," in the press box. I'm a professional. So we split the Dragon Statue, which was every week we picked a Northern quarterback and a Northern skill player. You could not repeat your picks anytime during the course of the year. I jumped out. I think I was ahead 3-0 after the first 3 weeks, and then tremendous Landis rally to take the lead, but at least I got it back in the end. So we finished 7-7 in the Dragon Statue. And then how did we do on our picks this year? We're still making picks this week, so that we'll add those. But last week I was 18-6 and Bill was 15-9.
Gross.
I hit a couple last week that were pretty good for me. I didn't do well on the betting show, but like I picked Syracuse straight up over Miami last week, for example. That was like a good one for me. I picked Texas. You picked Texas A&M. So that was a kind of a toss up that you lost. So beat you by 3 last week. For the year, I'm ahead by 11 now. I am 223-63. You are 212-74. I feel like we both had a little bit of a lull in the middle of the year. Are you satisfied with how we pick games? We it's not a betting show, so you and I don't do stuff against the spread, but we do score picks. I don't know. Like, is this? Are we telling people anything to be like, oh man, Bill was 212-74? Does that mean anything to anyone?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I should be better, right? Just picking winners. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't mind tallying a record against the spread, or maybe if we don't pick every game, or if we give a score for every game, like we pick out a handful to be counted against our record against the spread or something like that. I don't know. I do like picking every game. And I think we should pick every postseason game too, so I have an opportunity to come back.
A chance to rally. Okay. All right. Was there anything? So I kind of covered some news on National Signing Day on Wednesday, but as we sit here on Thursday, you were busy at Ohio State on National Signing Day. Obviously, I think the move that Oregon made on Wednesday to flip a couple guys late and just a lot of momentum within that program. Do you believe, and I would like to do this at some point for the show and also maybe for a coffee table book, but to go back and declare a king of the North every year, maybe at least since World War II in college football, who was the best Northern team. And I think there's a way that you could do who was the best Northern team that year and also who was the dominant Northern program of that era, and figure out maybe when you draw a line at like, okay, this is when this program sort of lost its supremacy, and use the definitions that we have for who Northern teams are. So two things then I think, Bill, are always at stake simultaneously. One is who's the best team this year, but one is like who has become the best program. So last year, and for a long time, I think there might have been a decade there where you would make compelling cases for Ohio State as the best Northern team and the best Northern program, right? Clearly, Michigan obviously was the best Northern team last year. They won the national title. There's no dispute. It's not like we would try to be fancy. I was like, no, Michigan was the king of the North for the year 2023. And if a Northern team wins the national championship, they will be the king of the North this year. It might be Oregon. It might be Ohio State. It might be Notre Dame. It might be Penn State. We would say that they were the best Northern team of this year. But with what Oregon has done on the field and then in recruiting on Wednesday, is Oregon making a play to be the best Northern program right now, which is not the exact same thing as being the best Northern team in an individual year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you can make the argument that Oregon might have the most recruiting juice in the country. And of course, some of that is Phil Knight related. Like, we're not naive to that. Phil Knight would very much like to see Oregon win a national championship, and he's 86 years old, I think. So they're like super organized with their NIL, and I think Division Street is what their collective is called, and he runs it. He set it up. Like, they know what they're doing. But they also have like the combination of that and a staff that's super aggressive about recruiting and really good at it. And I just think that is a tough combination to beat. I just like no one else in the North, I think, is organized that way except for Ohio State. And I would say that Ohio State is not quite as organized, on the NIL front as Oregon is, or streamlined maybe is probably the right word for it. So yeah, I think as long as that remains the case, and Oregon is positioning itself to be the best, we'll see what happens on the field here, right? Like, Ohio State has I think the same chance of being a national champion this year that Oregon does practically. And if the Buckeyes are able to do that, or at least finish better than Oregon, then it remains an ongoing conversation that I think you'd still put Ohio State at the top at, because Oregon would have to go earn that and take it away from Ohio State. But they're pushing. They're really pushing, I think, for that status. I would definitely agree with that.
Where things stand now, because we did a lot of this on the Tuesday show, so let's just sort of wrap it up. Oregon, with its flips, did end up with the highest average player rating by the 24/7 composite. They were 4th overall because they only had 21 commits. So like by totality, they were behind Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. But average player rating, Oregon was first at 93.77. Ohio State was 5th at 92.46. And Michigan was 6th at 92.26. And our guy John had been making the point, Bill. And again, Michigan with 23 commits, Oregon with 21, Ohio State with 26. Ohio State has a few more quantity. The fact that Michigan was able to close in a way, including that Nathaniel Marshall flip that happened on Tuesday that we talked about on Wednesday, was able to close in a way that their average star rating in a down year on the field. Obviously, Bryce Underwood is a huge driver there, but this wound up being an incredibly successful recruiting cycle for Michigan. And I think that is always very important to not let what is happening on the field and what might be a one-year blip drag down your recruiting. And there's always a way to sell that. First, there's a way to sell it with NIL, but there's also a way to sell like, hey, help us get back to where we should be. So I think credit to Michigan for that.
Yeah, that's another place that's got the NIL working well right now. I know our pal Ari Wasserman always used to talk about like Michigan not turning its on-field success under Jim Harbaugh into improved recruiting, and Michigan, I think, like via winning a national title despite having staff turnover, and now the NIL situation it has going on there has taken a step forward in recruiting. It actually creates a pretty interesting dynamic for Ohio State, I think, because we were having pretty drawn out conversations about Ohio State's NIL situation relative to what was happening in the SEC, because you were wondering like, hey, is Ohio State going to be able to build a national championship roster to compete with Alabama and Georgia? And now it's a little closer to home because Oregon's in the Big Ten and Michigan, at least for this cycle, has shown an ability to play at that level too. So like, it's not only Ohio State trying to keep pace with the South, it's Ohio State trying to maintain its place in the North from a recruiting standpoint.
And this gets to the heart of all the conversations that we have on this show, Bill, which is who can hang with the South. And for a long time in the North, the answer was one. Ohio State was the only answer when it comes to the kind of stuff you just talked about, the totality of a program, resources, investment, really money and talent is really what we're talking about. Can you outdevelop? Can you outcoach? Can you rise up? 1,000%. But really at the baseline, money and talent, can you hang? Are we officially at the point when we have that conversation, what had been 1 in the North is now 3?
Yes. I think
that's
so.
Awesome. That's awesome for the North, is it not?
It is. And I think maybe there's a 4th knocking on the door with Notre Dame.
And this is a challenge. This is a throwing down the gauntlet, is a reminder for Notre Dame, for Penn State, for Colorado, for Nebraska, for Wisconsin, for Washington, for anybody up here, like that it can be done. And it's all the things we've talked about activating Northern NIL and realizing that if you probably do have the money to some extent, to varying degrees, but to some extent, if you activate it and then smartly apply it, you're not going to get a bunch of kids who live in the South to come move to the North in high school, right? You're still going to have to go get some of these guys, but keep them home when you've got them up here, and we'll do a keep them home final tally, maybe early next week. But if you have the NIL, you can go win some battles. And the idea, I think in the end, Bill, before we go, we had talked about on Tuesday of like stinking Auburn as this team is like, what do they have to offer? Honestly, what do they have to offer other than NIL, which is a lot to offer? It felt like Auburn was repelled in the end in several areas. Nathaniel Marshall, Nate Marshall coming back to Michigan. Naeem Offord decommitting from Ohio State, but not for Auburn, for Oregon, right? Like that, there were some things that happened that were like,
Zion Grady too. Zion Grady, who's from Alabama. Auburn tried to get him like at the 11th hour, and Ohio State kept him.
So you talk about Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State beating back Auburn in the end for guys that Auburn was working hard on, right? I don't like, does that happen before? I mean, like,
no, maybe
like
not.
sometimes, but I think like those are great Northern victories. And as much as we said Penn State, like the South still owns signing day. We get it. There are some victories to be had now. And so if Ohio State is no longer leading the way on its own, Michigan and Oregon are right there. Notre Dame's coming, and a lot of other schools want to get there. Let's go.
I think the thing that was frustrating, like on the Auburn point, was if you're a school, if you're Oregon or Ohio State or Notre Dame or Michigan, whatever, and you're in a back and forth over NIL stuff with a kid who's trying to decide between like you and Alabama or Georgia, and like all things are equal and they decide to go to Alabama or Georgia, it's like you don't accept it, but you kind of get it. It's when the Auburn step in there. It's when like freaking Miami steps in. It's like come on, like you can't lose that. And I think Miami tried to get TJ Alford to flip from Ohio State, linebacker, really good kid from Florida, and it didn't happen. So I think that's where the progress has been made. Like that was like the most reassuring thing I think that we saw on Wednesday.
I agree. Okay. All right. So we will see you guys Friday morning on the betting show. We're still above water, not by much, but winning's winning. So we will have 2 final real money bets for this week, Tishu and I. And we also will go over how we did on our preseason win totals to figure out whether you guys should like listen to us or not. So we'll do that for the Friday betting show. Saturday night, 11 p.m. live on YouTube, and then dropping into all your podcast feeds right after. We'll be talking about all the conference championship games. And then Sunday, ESPN's going to come on the air at noon on Sunday Eastern, right, Bill? And start that show?
Yeah, I would imagine we'll have a bracket like 12:30 at the latest.
Right. I believe that ESPN show is going to be at halftime of a Providence, South Alabama college basketball game. I think they'll squeeze in the most important announcement in the history of college football right after this from Ed Cooley. Like that's how they roll over there. So again, as soon as the bracket is out, whatever, because like if you like you guys care, you're going to be aware of the bracket, then come find us. It's like that's all we would tell you. Come find us and we'll be chopping it up about the North, about these games, about who got fairly treated, who didn't. And then we'll be with you all through the playoff. So thanks for being here so far. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks to our producer, Mike Urostowski, for making us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.